This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 2, Episode 93 of the Jumblethink Podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs who took their dreams and ideas and turned them into reality. Along the way, they'll share some tips on how you can turn your ideas and dreams into reality too. Today on the podcast, our guest is Bonnie Bruderer. More about Bonnie in a moment. I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, make sure you swing on over to wherever you like to listen to your podcast and subscribe to the Jumblethink Podcast. If you like listening on Apple Podcast or iTunes, simply go to jumblethink.com/iTunes, and for Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. It'll take you right to the app, right where you can click subscribe. While you're there, leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you think of the Jumblethink Podcast. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have an incredible episode lined up for you, and we're going to jump into that in a moment. But before we do that, I want to tell you about some exciting news going on at Jumblethink. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while or followed us on social channels, you know that we've talked a lot about the concept of idea camps, a place where you can come, get recharged, have a lot of fun, learn a lot of great stuff, but ultimately have a strategy and a roadmap at the end of that event to take that idea and dream and make it a reality. Well, I'm excited to let you know that fall of 2019, we are launching our first idea camps, and we want you to be a part of it. So here's what you need to do. If you want to learn more about it, swing on over to jumblethink.com/ideacamps. That's jumblethink.com/ideacamps, and check out what's going on. We want you to be a part of Idea Camps. It's going to change your life and impact you to help you take your dreams and ideas and make them a reality. We also want to take a moment and thank our sponsors for today's episode, Floxy and OpportunityInChina.com. Here's a little bit more about our friends over at Floxy. You have a killer idea for the perfect graphic or website, but you feel stuck and overwhelmed by the cost and skills it takes to create those ideas. Maybe you lack the time you need to create them. No matter the obstacle, it's time to get that idea created. And our friends over at Floxy can help you create those killer graphics, the perfect website, or even create the copy that's used on your next ad, all at a low cost, starting at $349 per month. Their on-demand, unlimited graphic design, web, and copywriting are backed by a 7-day money-back guarantee for all new accounts. And you'll be working with a dedicated US-based project manager assigned to your account. There are no hidden fees, and billing is month to month. So check them out for your next project and for the project after that too. You can find them at floxy.com, FLOCKSY.com. Let them know that Jumblethink sent you. We also want to take a moment and thank our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com for sponsoring today's episode. Here's a little bit more about what they are doing.
At the dawn of the 19th century, forward-thinking people moved to the commercial centers of Europe. Moving into the 20th century, America welcomed millions into the land of freedom and opportunity. It is now the 21st century. Many of the successes and fortunes of our generations will be made in China. To learn how you can seize opportunity in China, follow the Opportunity in China podcast. The Opportunity in China podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streamed, or you can visit our website at OpportunityInChina.com.
Our guest today is Bonnie Bruderer. She is the founder and CEO of Binge Networks. Bonnie, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about Binge and get into that, but you have an interesting journey of entrepreneurship. I want to hear a little bit of that story. So tell us how you got started as a creator, creating your own journey, your own path.
Well, I think I was a born entrepreneur. I was, the winner of the brownie cookie badge every year and evolved into lemonade stands, dog walking businesses. And then in my career, I started very early on with tech and media. When the internet basically became a thing, and worked for top companies like CitySearch and Active Networks and NBC, and then really followed my passion and took a 180 and went into the human potential world. And I worked for great speakers like Tony Robbins, Harvey Mackay, many others for about 20 years. I toured with them and then worked with Harvey my last 5 years. And at the time, built my own brand, authored 4 books, hosted a radio show back when it was just regular radio before podcasting had come on board.
Right.
And yeah, so that's really how I got into this world. And then about 5 years ago, I moved to New York City to follow a dream of doing television. And I started a television talk show that was a primetime show on the Lifestyle Channel in Manhattan. And from there, it really grew and evolved. We ended up producing 700 shows. We had 9 spin-off series that came from the initial talk show. And what I found is that everyone that came on the show thought I had the best job in the world and wanted their own show. And then they also needed distribution. And so therefore, those were 2 things I knew how to make happen. And we went from being production and TV shows to a full streaming media platform, which is what we are today, and offering distribution on 50 different smart TV outlets. So that's the journey.
Yeah. That's crazy. I remember we met at New Media Summit and had a fun time getting to see what you do a little bit, talk to some of your team. For me, one of the things that stood out when you were sharing your story is that you had some of your own pain points on your journey where you were trying to figure out some of these things, and now you're helping to solve that for other people because you work through some of those issues of getting exposure, getting placement, getting your voice heard.
Yes.
So for you, tell us a little bit about that journey of going, I have a story to tell. I have an incredible potential of what I have to offer this world. And you started to craft your own message, your own story, and the journey of finding a home for that, a journey of finding positioning for that.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, the pain points, we have them daily as a growing, bustling media company. But really for me, I mean, it started when I realized that, I thought I had achieved my goals because I sought out, I created a talk show. It was picked up on a cable network. Like I thought it was the end all be all. And then I quickly realized, okay, that's just the very, very tip of the iceberg. So what happens next? And what I quickly realized is that the cable industry was dying out. And we were, on the scene in like 2014 is when our show started. And it was a very quick death. Not for the show in particular, but just the entire industry. And you started to see things like smart TV evolve, and you started to see, other opportunities come out. And so what I pride myself on with our success here at Binge is that instead of just being frustrated and like, this sucks and it's not me, it's the industry, I really tried to look at what was working. I'm a very solution focused person. And I saw that, social media is killing it, and that these smart TV outlets are really what I believe and what is now proving to be true. It's the next wave of internet. When I started working in the internet companies, no one knew what that was. Everyone's like, that's so stupid. We have yellow pages. Why would people look on their computer? And, same thing same conversation I've had 14 billion times, well, why would people watch TV? Everyone's on their phone. Yes. And, now we're starting to see that shift. So it's, so that's really what, created where we are today. And once I realized it was a pain point for me, I identified that it was also a pain point for, tens of thousands of other people. And so that's why we set out to create the platform that we have now.
So cool. So cool. All right. So now you've created this platform, and that I'm sure has its own challenges. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But you get to talk to creatives day in and day out. Your team gets to connect with people who have vision, have purpose, who have a drive to go somewhere and create something. You're still creating quite a bit too. So in that process of creating, tell us how you kind of get those ideas and inspiration in the process of creating for yourself.
Yeah, so it's funny because I have been on a road show tour since I saw you in New Media Summit. And prior to that, so New Media Summit, I had just literally landed from Toronto, and then I left New Media Summit and went to Greece and to Turkey. And so I had this period that was intensely busy. And then just now I kind of have a minute to come up for air. And I was talking to my team about our next film project. And it was so funny because all these great ideas were coming, like the name came in, then the next day it came in. I'm like, I have the idea for the poster. And it was so funny because that hasn't been the norm lately. You know, it's just been rapid fire, like getting the channels up as quickly as possible and dealing with the Sonys and the Apples and Rokus of the world. And so for me, I get my inspiration from the other creators. You know, when I have a conversation, like this morning, I've already had a few conversations with potential new shows. And then as they're talking, I was like, oh yeah, I'm constantly writing down notes. Or if you see me, I'm always writing notes on my phone. I'm not texting or like on my Facebook. I'm actually just like coming up with ideas, because just like when I was a life coach, I felt like I would sit in my sessions and like whatever issue they were tackling, it was directly relevant to my life. You know, I'm saying the words, I'm like, note to self, do that when you get home. And, and I feel the same thing with creative. It's that, you know, I get my inspiration from hearing all these great ideas or being on your show. You know, it's like amazing. All of a sudden I'm starting to research all the cool things that you're doing. And it like sparks so much for me creatively. And that's really the hope with Binge, is that we're that place for other creators to go to view content, but then also to kind of up-level themselves and figure out what's next. What else could I create? Who else could I interview?
Well, you've mentioned a little bit about Binge and what you guys are doing. I want to go a little bit deeper into that. Tell us, okay, so the way I understand it is that Binge is basically a distribution point for content. So whether it's audio through a podcast like ours or video, maybe it's YouTube creator, maybe they're creating a vlog on their own channels, whatever that is, for them to get exposure in places that they wouldn't through smart TV distribution centers. Is that right?
Very much, yes. And there's more. So we're two things. We've basically, like, our whole mission is to democratize the way that media distribution is done. So in the past, you had a show, you needed tons of money, or you needed tons of subscribers on YouTube or something. You needed a contract to get your show onto Netflix. Because I was someone who went through that, and it kind of sucks and the financials are not good, I wanted to present a different way. And so Binge is that place, exactly what you said, where you can go and you can stream. We have over 4,500 pieces of video content that you can see via podcast. You can see videos. And also we want creators to be able to monetize what they're doing. So we also have our own version of what I would say like Netflix, where you as a creator can set up your channel on Binge so that you can either charge a monthly subscription. So you say, okay, it's $6.99 a month or $4.99 a month or $100 a month to be part of Binge. Or you can put up a bunch of content and say, you know what, this is really special. Like this piece is $4.99 or this piece is $100 or $1,000. Or in the case that you have online courses, $10,000. And we set up, manage, distribute, and help bring viewers to all of that with our distribution. So yeah, that's
all right. So that's super cool. There's a lot of content being created right now.
Yes.
And content is everywhere.
Yes.
How are you making the people who work with you stand out in a noisy environment?
So I love that question, because that is another thing too. I felt like when I first started, we would put all of our shows on Facebook and on YouTube, and like we didn't get a big following. And I'm like, but we spent $10,000 on that piece of video. Doesn't matter. They don't care. So where our strategic vision was smart TV, and that is a market that is very undersaturated at this point. It's very popular. So I don't want to mix the two. And when I say that, if you're not familiar, it's places like Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire. That's what we're talking about. And we have distribution on 50 of those. And in that world, it's not noisy. It's not oversaturated at this point. So we help get content into the eyes that are already looking for it. Just to throw some numbers out, in some instances, like for example, with Roku, they have 24 million subscribers. Same with Apple TV. Those are no small numbers, and those people need things to watch. And so by going into that market, that really helps create these new audiences that are looking for content. And then we also work with the obscure companies that nobody has ever heard of. I think at New Media Summit, I said, raise your hand if you've heard of Chong Media, and not one went up. I think one.
Right.
And I was like, no, you shouldn't have. But what you need to know is they're the largest TV set manufacturer in all of China. Like, who's heard of China? And so they have 100 million subscribers, and they're one of our distribution partners. So we're using these markets again that are becoming household names. They should have been, but they're not yet. And so we're able to populate content in a very successful way. Because, people say Facebook's dying, YouTube's over. Like, who knows if that's true or not true? They'll probably evolve and iterate into something different. But there are markets out there that are very viable, very popular, and looking for content just like yours that, people just maybe aren't aware of yet.
Okay, so, I hear that. I have an Apple TV. It's what we watch most of our TV through, even though we have cable still. We of course, have Netflix. We watch traditional TV even through it. How are people even still finding stuff they don't know about then? Because just because it's there doesn't mean they know about it. So how are they finding this content?
Yes. So that's our probably number 2 question. Number 1 is analytics. That's the second question we always get. And so we personally work with all of the major distributors to try and get premier placement. And whether they have, a article that they're writing that's relevant to us, or whether they can place us, in a featured area in their app store. So that's one thing that we do. Also, searchability is huge. And so, for example, with Roku or Apple, if you have specific keywords that people are going to be looking for your content, you can target your channel to have those keywords. And so maybe someone is on CNN and they're looking for something, and then they all of a sudden go, oh yeah, I have a big presentation. What about business tips? And if that's one of your keywords, it's going to point them to your channel within Binge. So those are some of the things that we're doing. For example, in the iOS store on your iPhone, we're placed next to Oprah if you type in Binge Networks. And those are all things that we curated so that, obviously people haven't heard about us yet, maybe, but they've heard of Oprah. And so and we're actually come up right before her. So it basically, positioning like that is really important in that world. And we're constantly working on that. And then we have one person on our team that is just our digital marketing manager. She's just responsible for that. So she does social media for all of our new shows every day on all social platforms. We take, new videos, and I say video, but podcasts we turn into a video. So podcast, same thing. And she splices them into little 10-second segments and markets them on all of the social media platforms. And then we also do, like each week, we have a newsletter that goes out on Tuesdays with 4 shows that we recommend. And then Thursday is our binge-worthy alert, and we pick one show. So we're constantly supporting our creators in that way, which is very different. I've never seen that. Well, I mean, if you're on Netflix, maybe, but, and maybe if you're a House of Cards, but like we really want to get our creators success, especially with the new paywall system. If you have a show that's subscription based, we definitely want to help promote that so that you can start earning money on content. So
good. So good. We're going to pivot here. I want to talk a little bit about how are you finding purpose in what you do? Because what you're doing is pretty cool. But how does it fulfill you?
So for me, initially the vision was to be able to create the show, as I shared. And then for me, once I had done that, it was actually way more rewarding to create the shows for other people. So that really still fuels me and thrives me, gives me purpose and gets me out of bed at 5:30 every morning. But even bigger than that, I feel like I was put in a place in life where I've had opportunities that others haven't, and I've created them all myself. So nothing was ever handed to me, but to work for Tony Robbins for 10 years and then not to achieve something Herculean is just like a shame, because I sat in a room with him for literally tens of thousands of hours. And then same with Harvey McKay. And I feel blessed to have been shoulder to shoulder and, in a room with these minds even when I worked for Harvey, I managed a CEO group. So I was around 35 CEOs from big industry in the US. And so I always feel compelled to do something Herculean, and when I created the vision for Binge and where we constantly are managing towards, which can be very stressful, is that like, I see it as a Google or as a Facebook or as a Instagram. Like in 1 year, I want everybody to be talking, oh, hit me up on my Binge channel. Like I want that to be part of mainstream conversation.
Yeah.
So that's really, I feel, because I've worked for bigger companies and I work for all those greats, I just feel like if I don't accomplish that, like, why does a Mark Zuckerberg, have a home run and I didn't? And so I put a lot of pressure on myself and my team. Sorry, team. But to do that in life, because I just feel that it's possible and I've seen it done before. And so that's really what drives us. And then with that, it's, it really is our content creators that drive that. So we can't just have this great vision without incredible content. And so it's so much fun to go on there and like literally each day a new show pops up. I'm always asking our manager, I was like, where did this one come from? Because we're at a growth point where I don't have my hands on everything anymore like I used to. I'm so sometimes things pop up or they slip through or a new show comes on board that I didn't personally touch. And so it's really fun to see that type of growth and that really fuels me.
What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome in your business?
For us, it's always the same. It's always time and money. It's like there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
I was here at 7:00 or so this morning and I worked, very, very late last night. And I do it because I want to, not because I have to. But that's always a thing. It's like there's never, like I wake up with, it's good anxiety. I don't mean to say like it's a positive anxiety, but it's like, oh my God, there's so much we have to do today. and I go to bed with that same feeling. But I just feel that, that's always a struggle. And then financially, it's like, where do you grow? We've grown to a point where I have actually self-funded the whole network. So now, logically, I guess, you could do a fundraise and then try to scale exponentially. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, we got through the first 4 years. Why would I want that?
Yeah.
So, it becomes a struggle when you're managing with those types of financial parameters. But we always make it work. And, we've had consistent growth year after year, thankfully. So that's where I think we will still stay individual in that respect. And so then of course finances is always a problem because I have like $1 billion. My grandma used to say, you've got a champagne appetite with a beer budget. And I run my company the same way.
Wow. Well, speaking of that, what's the next big goal you have for the business?
Yeah. So for us, we just launched pay-per-view. And what that means is, as I said, it allows any content creator to set up their own Netflix, whether it's a monthly subscription or pay per piece of content. So we are making a huge splash in the fitness industry because, people that have high production value yoga classes and abs classes and fitness and things like that, that's a big push for us the first 2 quarters. Well, I'm already in 2019. This last quarter of 2018 and the first 2 of 2019, that will be a big focus for us. And premium content. We're starting to win over shows that were with places like Amazon Prime or even Netflix and started to realize, hey, financially, this is not the best deal. And so we're starting to get some really top shows onto the platform that are paid content shows. And that's going to be really huge for us. We have one in particular launching November 13th called After Forever. And it deals with a lot of, I guess I'll say diversity, but we're trying to come up with a new word because I feel like that's like, it's excluding people. But anyway, it deals with gay content. It deals with a gay marriage, a loss theme. So the LGBTQ community will be also a focus for that type of content. And yeah, it just really, we want to make a big splash and be that like Netflix for the everyday person.
We'll be back with Bonnie to go so much deeper into this. We're going to talk about how to get exposure. We're going to talk about how to monetize and create content that is monetizable. We're going to talk about standing out in a noisy world and audio versus video in the world of content creation. We'll be right back.
We want to take a moment and thank our friends over at Floxy for sponsoring today's episode. Here's a little bit more about them. Floxy is doing some really, really cool stuff. Did you ever need a graphic designed, a website developed, or copywritten, but found that the designers and developers were too expensive and often took a long time to get your project completed? Well, Floxy is your answer. Floxy is your unlimited graphic design, web development, and copywriting team. Plans start at $349 per month with no hidden fees, month-to-month billing, and you can cancel at any time. So check them out for your next project and for the project after that at floxy.com. That's FLOCKSY.com. And let them know that Jumblethink sent you.
We are back with Bonnie Bruderer to talk about binge networks, and we're going to go deeper into specifically content creation and what you need to be thinking about in that space. Before we do that, Bonnie, can you tell people how they can find and connect with you?
Absolutely. So if you want to watch our over 4,500 videos, you can go to bingenetworks.tv and you can stream there. Or if you're interested in having a channel, just go to bingechannels.com. It's an application process. We're quite particular on who we work with, but if you have content and you're interested, then go over there, bingechannels.com, and one of our producers will reach out to you.
Very, very, very cool. Okay, so we're going to talk about the content creation side. I want to give some of our content creators out there some ideas that they need to be thinking about. As a master of content creation and an advocate for others who are doing it, you have a perspective that many of us in the weeds of doing it, we don't have the time or the maybe relationships to ask the right questions or get exposure to the right people to help us in that journey. So let's talk about this. When it comes to content creation, you talked a little bit about audio and video, people turning their podcast into a streamable service through Binge or through other channels. And then also we talked a little bit about video. Let's talk about audio versus video. What are your stats like? What are you seeing? What are people wanting right now when it comes to the content they're consuming?
So people love video. That's the gist of it. Now, don't get discouraged if you're just like, absolutely not. I'm never getting in front of a camera. We have a technology that actually will take any audio podcast and put an image on it. Basically pulls an audio feed, converts it into a video file, puts an image and a WAV file on it. And not to get too technical, but people actually are consuming that type of content. Wow. So that is perfectly fine. And it's fine for smart TVs. And the reason why, I'm sure we've all gone to like a dinner party or a friend's house and you see the TV on and it's like a blue background and it says cocktail music. It's the same sort of thing. Like podcast content is consumed in that same way with smart TVs. Yeah. People really do want that relationship. Like our time is so splintered and people, especially like your content doesn't just deal with entrepreneurs, but it's very entrepreneurial focused. Yeah. So a lot of entrepreneurs feel lonely and they want that connection. And a video gives you that sort of at least FaceTime where you feel like for example, in our office all day long, we're listening to Gary Vaynerchuk. And so you feel like you know him, like if I saw him in the hall, I'd be like, hey, oh, wait, we don't know each other. But I watched him on so much video that I feel like we have a relationship and that we do. And so it really does help you connect with your audience when they can see you and have that one-to-one connection. I know as a TV talk show, that was the weirdest thing for me when I would go to a party in New York and people would be like, oh, can I take a picture with you? And I'm like, why? And then I realized, oh my gosh, they think we know each other. We're friends because they know, 100 things about me because they've been watching my show. They know my dog's name. They know my relationships, my family. So really that is what you want to, if you have the choice, I really strongly recommend video.
That's very cool. You obviously, you talked a little bit about analytics, and analytics is a part of your platform. What are the stats telling you? Because you shared some really cool stats at New Media Summit, specifically around podcasting. You're seeing traction in both spaces. So if I have a video show or a show in video format versus a show that's audio converted to video, what kind of numbers are you seeing for those kind of people?
So with our platform, we're getting about 2 million views a month. And that is a combination of closed circuit programming we have all throughout the US, our bingenetworks.tv site, and then probably I'd say the core 6, which is like Apple Amazon, iTunes, et cetera, that do give us data. So we're distributing on probably 46 platforms blindly that we're just turning over the binge content and we don't get back data. It is improving as the industry grows, but we can only quote legally like what we can validate.
Yeah.
So there's one thing. But as far as the industry in whole, so Roku, for people that don't know, that's basically a set-top box, or you can get a plug-in device for your TV. What do you call that? A thumb drive. For your TV. Same with Amazon Fire, a stick. Those platforms. So Roku is the number one video consumption site in the world right now. Wow. And if you think about it, if you think about who owns YouTube, which is Google, it's kind of mind-boggling because you feel that everybody's on computers and everyone's on their phone and they're watching content that way. But the data shows it's actually not the case. Roku actually supersedes that. So that's one thing. The second thing, the podcasting world is ginormous, unarguably. However, only 29% of the population listens to podcasts. Right. So when you think about that, where's the other 71%? That's a ginormous number. That's like 2/3 more. So they are digital consumers that aren't podcast listeners. And so we really help people access those markets of people that are digitally savvy. They are consuming on smart TV or other platforms, but just not podcasts. And so we always tell people if podcast is your thing, which many people are just rocking it and killing it and, top of their game and number one podcast, which is fantastic. And you can use our platform as a way to sort of migrate new audiences over. And even if you just use Binge, just say, hey, go to iTunes and download or subscribe or rate me. Yeah. Those things are all possible.
Super, super cool. All right. So let's say I'm going, hey, this sounds really cool. I want to start being a content creator. This gives me a new outlet. I'm kind of over YouTube or I'm over iTunes because as a podcaster, I know how bad iTunes actually is for podcasters. I love Apple. I'm an Apple fanboy, but guys, if you're going to have an Apple podcast app, just step up the game. And I'll just say it. Anyway, all that to say, content creation isn't easy. No. It is a lot of work. I know you know that because you've created both traditional shows and you've created streaming shows. How do people really get to create content? How do they get to the place where they know how to, or what it looks like to create content people want to engage with?
Yeah, it's, there's two sides, right? There's the value packed content that you're distributing. Yeah. So like if you're a podcast, you have to think about content first. So you have to think about what am I saying? Who am I saying it to? Even right now, I'm watching our digital marketing manager. She's redoing our website because I just said, listen, we're not saying the right message to the right person anymore because we've changed the model a little bit. So we need to be speaking to the end consumer. And you always have to think that with your, whatever it is, a video, a podcast, a Facebook Live, all of that, anytime you turn anything on that's recording anything, you want to make sure that you're conveying value-packed content. And so put some thought into what that looks like. Don't just get on there and talk about like how amazing your book is. It hit number one on Amazon and this, people don't care. What they want to know, why did it hit number one? So what are the 3 things that they need to know about business that are going to shift their focus? Like talk about that. And I think that's the biggest mistake people make. So many times on these Facebook Lives or even a lot of times, like we will turn creators away because we're like, no, thank you. Because it's not about you. Yeah. It's about the listener and what that listener, how is their life like? We are all busy people. How is their life going to be better after that 3 minutes or that 50 minutes if it's a podcast because they listen to you? Yeah. So put some thought into that. And then from a production standpoint, you need to make sure that you're producing high value content. And that doesn't have to mean expensive. Trust me, as somebody that has spent probably $250,000 on production over time and made every mistake in the book, paying a lot doesn't necessarily equate to good. So you can learn how to do content. I'm a huge fan. I hate to give a little plug for the YouTube, but I'm a huge fan of going on YouTube and watching a video on how do I do great lighting? How do I do
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
sound? Like in 3 minutes, you can learn. And then usually people will link to something in Amazon that is like, for me, I recommend the Diva lights. They're a circular
Yeah.
halo light that you can put your phone in the middle of, and you can attach a microphone. And really, if you have a good microphone, that Diva light, and great content, you're in good shape. Make a good background. So many times, even with our content creators, you're like, because they have the light right, they've got the sound right, their content is valuable, but they're broadcasting in front of like a messy bookshelf, or there's a cat walking on the book, the couch behind them, which is very distracting. So again, doesn't have to mean expensive. We constantly get kudos on our backdrop in our office. And literally, it's just a piece of wallpaper taped up that we got at Home Depot. So that, and then I take time to curate it. Like I put a nice stool with we have a glowing hashtag because that's a big symbol for us, and a little plant and 3 books. And the books, mean something to me. But that's it. That maybe cost $200 for that whole setup. And so make sure that you're putting thought into every single piece of what you're putting out there, because people care. It matters. If I'm watching something and the lighting is bad, I'm like, this person doesn't even care enough to learn how to do lighting. Why am I going to entrust my business to them, or my health, or my relationship? So just think about those things. And, we're always happy to help. There's great videos on our platform as well on how to produce content. So you can always just shoot me an email and I can direct you to those. But yeah, those are the biggest things that I think they're the biggest mistakes I see.
Super cool. Okay, so we're going to move past content creation and into the part that so many of us consider the holy grail of content creation, and that's converting content into audience listeners and audience listeners into revenue. You talked a little bit about monetization on your platform, but let's talk broader and then get more narrow as we go. How should we be thinking about our content when we're creating it to make it monetizable? And then what are the streams we should be thinking about as we're creating to monetize that content?
Yeah, I mean, start again. It's like, I hate to say it because so many people just love to talk about on their podcasts and their videos and everything what they love, which is great. Like if you love animals, do it, but make it great. But figure out, just with anything in life, make a solid business plan behind it first. Like don't just get on there and start doing a podcast about whatever it is, XYZ, or a video show, I should say, any content. Figure out what you want the end goal to be and how you're going to monetize it. And you may not be there, and you may not be there for a year or two. That's okay. But you want to have that vision in place, because so many, small businesses fail. Shows go off the air. Like so many things happen when people don't have that solid piece in place. And again, going back, if I had to like reverse engineer the success that we've created, it's because very early on, I was focused on the monetization. I wasn't just following my passion. Yeah. I was doing both. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing I can reiterate to people is have a business plan. And what's that going to look like? Is it going to be ad revenue and you're just going to get as many subscribers and then you're going to make money on ads? Is it going to be sponsorship based where you partner with a big corporation? And just to throw some numbers out there again, after New Media Summit, I got asked to do a podcast. It was an audition. It paid $2,000 per podcast. Wow. That's a lot of money. And the reason why, it was sponsored by a pet food company. It was on pets. Wow. So look at those opportunities and figure out what's available to me. If you're doing a podcast on like mental health or wellness, look at pharmaceutical companies, look at medical companies, like entities that are paying big dollar. Look at how you can incorporate that into what you're doing. And if it's not that model, figure out what are you going to do? Are you going to charge guests to be on the show because you have a large reach? Like there's so many different monetization structures, but pick one and then make sure you master it.
All right. So we talked a little bit about content creation. We talked a little bit about video versus audio and monetization. Which I may have said that already. If I did, well, then I did.
It's important. It's worth saying twice.
Yes, I think so, because, if it's not sustainable, then it's not worth really starting. So create a sustainable model so that you can have content that you can create and bring value to and have longevity. What is it? I think 80 some percent of podcasters drop out before 25 episodes. I mean, and there's two different tiers there of when they drop out, but if you're just creating content and you're going to drop out after 5 episodes, at that point, why start? You got to have the long game in mind. All right. So we talked a little bit about monetization. I think I've said that 7 times now. So how do you stand out? I mean, we talked about a lot of contents being created. There's a lot of noise in this space. There's a lot of bad content that's getting over glorified and a lot of information that just needs to disappear. But how do you stand out and create content that that people are just drawn to? I mean, there's marketing pieces. There's so many pieces in that. How do you do it?
Yeah, I think it's a message to market match. Like you have to really make sure that you find the market for your message. And once you've done that, like it's brilliant. Once you've done that, then you can just keep creating and sort of follow your passion and do what you do, and you'll eventually end up making money on it. But to your point, so many people have to quit. Like for me, I'm such a fighter. I literally that's what I do in my spare time is kickboxing. So I am going to fight to the death match. And I had to so many times early on as an entrepreneur, and just didn't know where the money is going to come from and how do we create it and how do we get more. And so I think that you have to also understand the reality of it. Like going into it, it's not just a fun thing. It's not just something that oh, I'm going to do a podcast because, and I'm saying podcast because that's where we are, but that means video show, create content. You have to really understand what that means and what a commitment it is. And oh my God, especially if you're doing video, as a woman, you got to do hair and makeup and you have different outfits and you have to have different jewelry. Like there's so many things that go into it. And that's just 1% of it. So I think really understanding what your mission is, why you're doing it, how you're going to monetize, and then matching that message to the right market. And once you hit all of that, it's great. But if any one of those things are off, you're going to struggle and unfortunately probably be in that 80%.
I love stories. Stories are one of the things that I think are foundational to really understanding the value that is being shared. Can you share maybe a story or two of how Binge has impacted either listeners or creators when they go to the platform and how it's helped them go from one level to the next level, or how it's helped them actually find a home where they can connect with the people they want to connect with?
Yeah, we have a lot of them. So one of the more recent, we just actually were the media sponsor for a big event here in Miami called Blockchain Shift. Yeah. And it was very interesting because we just agreed to, we created that partnership. We agreed to do it. We were there at the event with a big booth. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, we really helped them because we had a huge reach. And then now we created a lot of brand awareness for what they were doing. And on the flip side of the coin, it put us on the map because everyone, now we're partnered, and then every company there, and there were 3,000 people there. So they're like, oh, wow, if they're their media partner. But the biggest thing that happened that day, or it was a 2-day event, is we saw one of our channel partners. So because we were partnered with Blockchain and then we were advertising them, one of our channel partners, the cryptocurrency show, they went and they connected with Blockchain and they were broadcasting live from the event. So not only was it their show because of something that happened with Binge, but then they probably had 50 to 75 people on their show over those 3 days, building that awareness. And it was really the first time with my own eyes, in front of my face, I saw the ripple effect of what Binge can do for people. And that was really that still gives me chills to see it happening before your eyes. Our booth was positioned where we could see their booth. And I'm like, oh my God, he just had 20 more people on his show. So that's one thing. We've had people that have shows on the network. We have one called Top Docs, where it's a chiropractor that's based in St. Louis, Missouri, or Kansas City, Missouri, sorry. And he did a show on autoimmune, and it was seen on a network in South Africa, of all places. Wow. Yeah. And the woman had struggled and gone through every doctor on her continent. And she flew to him here in the United States and paid, I think, $10,000 to work with him. And I mean, not only is that a game changer, that's a pretty nice client to have, but it changed her life. And again, those are the things that the power of media and the power of just that the syndication, and who knows who else has been touched by that show and other shows. And so for us, that's really like, to go back to your initial question of like, what gets me out of bed, what drives me, and what am I passionate about? That is really it, is seeing and hearing those stories of people that, their show got picked up by a big network, or something else happened because their presence on Binge. And so, yeah, those are really fun and exciting.
Can you remind us how we can find and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in a channel, just go to bingechannels.com. If you want to view the content, see that show, 4,000 others, 4,500 others, just go to bingenetworks.tv.
Super, super cool. We'll be right back with rapid fire questions.
We want to take a moment and thank our friends over at opportunityinchina.com for sponsoring today's episode. Here's a little bit more about them. Have you been looking for a way to change your career or social prospects? Do you see the world around you changing and haven't quite figured out what path to take? You are not alone in seeking opportunity. Visit Opportunity in China for access to scholarships to attend university in China, or if you have a bachelor's degree already, opportunityinchina.com provides access to jobs in the educational sector all across China. Working in China is not only often well paid, but it will place you among 1/5 of the world's population, boosting your social network, bringing you more deeply into the story of globalization, and opening doors you never knew existed. So seize your opportunity now. Visit their website for more information at opportunityinchina.com. By the way, they have a great podcast. Simply search for Opportunity in China Podcast to learn more about what they're doing. Now let's jump into rapid fire questions.
We are back with Bonnie Bruderer, CEO and founder of Binge Networks, doing really cool stuff. Bonnie, we are going to do rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. The first question is, what is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
I would say just start somewhere. Map out your plan and then just start taking steps in that direction.
What is one change you would like to see in the world?
I would like to see more kindness. I feel like in media especially, there's been a skew this past year or two. I won't say why, but I feel like there's so much negativity on social media, on television, and it's too much. So I want to see the pendulum swing back to kindness and positivity.
Yeah, so good. You've shared a lot of, well, not a lot, but you've shared a little bit of your story and how you became an entrepreneur. You've done a lot already. You have incredible things ahead of you. But what do you want your legacy to be?
I truly do want to be known as like the next generation of Oprah.
Okay.
Only in that, like, there's that Oprah effect, right? Like, I don't care about being famous, any of that. I would like to be a billionaire. That would be nice. But what I love so much about what she impacted in the world, she created so many. She created Dr. Phil. She created Dr. Oz. She created so many people.
Right.
From liaising with her brand. And that's what I want to create for people. I want to be able to say, in a year, 5 years, 10 years, that hundreds of our channels are making millions of dollars a year on their content. So that's really what I want to be able to do. And then also I really respect her philanthropic endeavors, and I want Binge to be able to engage in that on a huge global scale.
Where do you find inspiration?
So because this is audio, not video, I have my little puppy on my lap, and she is a big source of inspiration. I find like just the quiet moments, whether it's going to a kickboxing class or taking my dog to the park or playing with my dog and my cat. Those are the times when I seem to find the most inspiration and that make me the happiest.
What is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read, and why?
Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
The print is so small, but at least in my copy, but I just feel like everything is mindset. And I just would love for everybody to realize that if you can dream something and if you're willing to hustle hard enough, that you can create anything in life.
All right. So we usually have a wild card question, and here is the wild card question for you today. What is one trend you are currently excited about?
Smart TV, the growth of smart TV in the world, and the literally millions of people that are converting, becoming cord cutters, and consuming their content on smart TV outlets.
What is one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
My OCD, like goal setting and planning. I write down my goals every single day. We have pen chalkboards in our whole office, and I'm constantly just like writing. But I think that that's what's necessary to create success.
In the episode earlier, you were talking about how you are working incredibly hard, long days, but how do you start and finish those days?
So I start every day. I wake up, I play with my little animals. I have a doggy and a cat, and I meditate. And then I do some form of working out. So whether it's just a run, a long walk at the dog park, or a kickboxing class, I always get that like as my foundation for the day. So that's how I start.
If you, how do you finish then?
How do I finish? So I try to sort of bookend. I'm a big binge watcher. I'm not going to lie about that. I generally will watch like something on Netflix or Amazon Prime. I say it's research because I need to know what's going on in the industry, but really it's the only way to shut off my brain. And then when I'm falling asleep, I try to sort of bring back how I started the day and really just do in my mind what I'm grateful for. So sending love to my family and friends, like visualize my goals. And then I usually fall asleep.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
Honestly, I can't imagine anything else. I feel like every single step has led to this. And I'm so like, my hooks are so deep into it that I know I couldn't work for anyone else, but there's nothing else I would rather do.
Now, can I throw in one more wildfire question?
Sure.
Random question. I'm fascinated by Manhattan. It's my favorite place. I have an office there. I know you've spent a lot of time there. I think you still live in the city. I could be wrong on that. But what's one place everyone needs to go to in Manhattan?
Oh, let's see. We're actually in Miami now, but I go back and forth because we started in Manhattan. Yeah, no, great question. Oh God, I think the High Line. And here's why. Because number one, it's just visually beautiful and it's like a breath of fresh air in the middle of this big city. But to me, it's an example of something that is so obscure, like so random. Who thought of taking an old debilitated railroad and turning it into this beautiful park? And that in itself sparked the entire Hudson Yards area, which now is probably it is the largest development in the world. And I just think it changed the entire city. So I think everybody should go there.
Our final rapid fire question is, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
So, I mean, it's definitely making the network a household name. So being known as the Netflix for the everyday person, being known as, the next Oprah-ish type person that really changed the world of media and how distribution is done with our platform.
As we wrap up today's episode, we always like to leave. You have a final thought. So what's your final thought for us today?
So my final thought is if you're listening and you have a dream or a vision or an idea for content, I am talking to you. And so many times we listen to these shows and they're like, oh yeah, but they're not talking to me. No, I'm really talking to you. And I say that because I was that person, like I didn't have any clue, money, contacts, anything other than somebody on the bus next to me had. Like there was nothing except for what I created myself that led to where we are today, and really, really, really hard work. So I just share that with people. Like if you're sitting there thinking, oh, but not me or next year or whatever, like jump on Binge, apply for a channel, come watch our shows, see what other people are doing, whatever it is for you that's going to inspire you. But that is really the biggest lesson, is that there's no magic wand, or like no one's going to tap you eventually and say, yeah, it's your turn. You have to just go and fight for it.
So good. Bonnie, thanks so much for taking time out. I love what you're creating. It inspires me to think that there are other people who are innovating, and they're not going through the traditional channels of saying, hey, I'm going to go partner or do some $1 billion startup round funding or something like that, but just getting dirty with the work and doing the work and creating something awesome along the way. So thanks for being on, sharing your story, and encouraging all of us to be awesome creators.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me, you guys.
Once again, we want to thank Bonnie from Binge Networks for taking time to be on the podcast. If you want to learn more about Binge Networks or connect with Bonnie, make sure you check the episode notes for all of those links. We also want to thank our sponsors for today's episode, OpportunityInChina.com and Floxy. We appreciate their partnership with what we're doing, and make sure you check out what they're doing and help support what they are doing too. As we wrap up, I want to remind you, I talked about it at the beginning, we've been talking about idea camps and how they can impact you for a couple years now. We want you to be a part of our first one in fall of 2019. Here's what you need to do. Head on over to jumblethink.com/ideacamps. That's jumblethink.com/ideacamps. You can learn a little bit more about what idea camps are. There's a lot more information coming. Connect with us. Let us know how we can serve you in those idea camps and turn your ideas and dreams into reality too. Now it's your turn. Get out there. Take a step, a small step, a big step, but any step to chase those dreams and ideas and change the world around you.
Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.